So thank you all for coming. There's a couple that really wanted to come and couldn't make it. And I got this letter from Bruce and Becky. And it says, it looks like Becky and I won't make it to CAP this weekend as intended. So I thought I would express my appreciation and remembrance of your dear mom this way. What struck me recently is trying to fit the chronology of our acquaintance with her into the aging memory, is how young she was, 54, when she lost her husband, 36 years of marriage, and how many years she lived as a widow, 40 years. I guess we were so young ourselves at that time that it didn't seem as shocking as it really was. How differently it seems now looking back. It is wonderful to remember that in the Lord's mercy, both she and her dad were saved before she passed away, or before he passed away. Though I remember her expressing that she wished that they could have had more time together as a saved couple. I recently appreciated and echoed the sentiments mentioned in her obituary notice. She manifested a gentle and faithful spirit and a trust in the Lord, regardless of life's changes and losses. It is difficult for us to escape from the confinement of the present and our awareness and appreciation of life and of one another. But she is now set free from that time-imposed limitation. No more body infirmities or limitations, but joining the multitude of redeemed spirits who know the Lord now as we will soon know him. As David said so long ago, she will not come back to us, but we will go to her and find and join together in the glorified perfect bodies to serve and worship joyfully forever. We do miss you all. In his love, Becky and Bruce, or Bruce and Becky. And as we look at her life and join to remember her and all the experiences that we've had together, it's when she passed, well, before that, when she stayed with us, Mrs. Gadang, or Grandma, was always cautious about being a burden to people or make people wait. And we found that she was always too rash in moving and always afraid that she would hurt herself in her rashness. And we're trying to get her to slow down. But when she ended up at home, she still insisted on doing her part. And folding the clothes was her job, and we couldn't touch it. That was her job. So Carol would bring up the basket of the laundry in the morning. We would set it on the couch, and then when she was ready, she'd pick that basket up. And sometimes we weren't fast enough to bring the basket to her, that she would get up and try to go get the basket with her limitations in mobility. But anyways, it was a good remembrance of her, and she felt that she belonged, and that's what we wanted by moving her into the house. And her passing, with all the logistics of getting everything organized at the funeral home and all that, it seemed like because the burial was to be now, that to me, it felt like we weren't doing enough at the time, and wanted to have a good remembrance of her, and that somebody would say something, and it seemed like everything was happening so fast that what are we going to say? So as I was thinking about that, I said, well, I got to say something, and the time wasn't opening up, and I asked the person at the funeral director to give me a minute before they close the casket and all that. So the thing that occurred to me at the time was the legacy that she was leaving behind, her faithfulness, and what we got from her life in trusting the Lord and living for the Lord. And there was a song that sort of struck me. It's a song by Steve Green that it says, "We're pilgrim on a journey of the narrow road, and those who've gone before us line the way." And as I think of our sister, our mother, grandmother, she's joined these ranks, and she's there, as we've been hearing already. We will go to her. She's not coming back to us. And the hymn keeps on going. It says, "Cheering on the faithful and encouraging the weary." When we think of Grandma and what Bruce just brought to our attention about her losing her husband at such a young age, and at that time she was our grandma, so that put her in the seniors category, which we weren't there yet. And like Bruce mentioned, at that time it was hard for us to really grasp how young she was when Grandpa Godin died. And the life that she lived, her home was open. She was always inviting people. We'd have a full dinner table at her place, constantly inviting people in, and his hospitality that she showed was a real legacy. And the thing is that Mrs. Godin, to me, was a friend's mother. Bert, I used to hang around with Bert when we were young, and that's when I first got acquainted with her. And later, because she worked at Sears, and we would go to Simpson Sears to buy her stuff and to pick up the parcels that we had ordered, and there was that beautiful lady that worked at Sears. There was the lady that became my mother-in-law. And when Carol and I got married, I heard that her dad really was, at that time, was Bert's father, had gotten cancer. And I remember those days, and I thought, like, I had met him at the mill, because you had to go see Pat to get a parking permit in the mill yard. And I had left the mill, but I went back to work for the summer. And I had a long chat with him. He got me to sit down at his desk, and we were talking because he knew my dad, and we exchanged our experiences and what I was doing. I'd been going back to school and all that. So I had a friendly conversation with him, and we knew each other. And the thing is that when I went to ask him to marry Carol, he had some long time. Anyway. And the thing is, it was a quick, we had a quick courtship. But anyways, I think he was happy that Carol and I met. So, back to Mrs. Godin. Well, first, when Pat's cancer returned, Grandma moved to Toronto. She stayed at first with Larry Steers and Margaret. And they lived a little further away from the downtown. And then they acquainted her with Jean Vance. And she lived downtown, so was within the transit system, so she could make room, she could make access to the hospital a lot easier. And she got acquainted with Jean Vance, which became a lifelong friend. And because she was there, when we went with our children, because Patrick and Sophie were both born with club feet, and we spent a lot of times in Toronto with the sick kids, and that's where we stayed. And we were getting letters every year from them. And it was for us as a young couple and starting a young family, they have been a good example to us. And the thing is that Mrs. Vance passed away 3 years ago, and she left a legacy, and I think it influenced Gamama as well. And then there was a time also in Gamama's life after Pat had passed away and she was by herself. There's a time that we found that she was a little bit discouraged. And Mitch LaRocque and I went to visit her, and the fact that she wasn't doing enough, she felt she wasn't doing enough. And we re-encouraged her and mentioned to her that it's not the bright stars in the heavens that mean a lot, because those bright stars they shine for a while and they're gone. It says those little stars that it's a dim light, but it's a dim light that's always there as a guide, and you can rely on them. And we reassured her, and I think she was encouraged by that, and her life showed it. And when we look at this hymn sort of impressed me and guided me as to the legacy that she left. And to my amazement, after this was all done, I had spoken on this hymn, which I'll play it later. We found out as Carol started reading the journal, her prayer journal, and she's reading through, and we're getting a lot of insights that we hadn't seen before. And at times Carol would be sitting reading the journal and all of a sudden start crying. It just told us more about her life and what she enjoyed, what she went through, and the joy she had of having the family around her and all that. But then we came to a page where she had wrote out this hymn. At the time that I spoke at the funeral, I had no idea. She wrote out the whole hymn. And it spoke to her like it spoke to me. And then the hymn goes on and says, their lives a stirring testament to God's sustaining grace. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful, and that we have that that legacy that was left. She was faithful, and in ways that we didn't appreciate at the time. But as we look back, it confirms it. May the fire of our devotion light their way. May the footprints that we lead them to believe. And the lives we live inspire them to obey. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. Then, surrounded by so great a cloud of witness, let us run the race, not for the prize, but for those who've gone before us. Let us leave to those behind us. And so we can honestly say that she passed on a heritage of faithfulness through her godly life. And there's a verse that struck me. It's a verse that we read in Ecclesiastes 7:2. And if there's a word in that verse that keeps reoccurring, it's telling us all is vanity. When we look at life down here and the things that people go after, it's all for nothing if you don't have the Lord. And here's what this verse says. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to heart. So the idea is, where are we going? And Mrs. Gadet knew where she was going, and her life reflected it. And then the hymn goes on, after all our hopes and dreams have come and gone, and our children sift through all we've left behind, may the clues that they discover and the memories they uncover become a light that leads them to the road we each must find. So, in closing, I will play this hymn. I've got it here. And you can hear it.